The Bogosity podcast, early and ad-free. Become a subscriber at Patreon, Subscribestar, or Discord. Use the links at donate.bogosity.tv.
Welcome to the Bogosity podcast for the week of January 19, 2025. The podcast that's happy. Hope you're happy too. This is your host, Shane Killian. Let's quantize the news of the bogus. It's the last few days of the Biden administration, and he's just been lighting matches on the way out. Social media is full of all sorts of ways he's been doing so let's cover something that's a nice microcosm of it, while also being a little covered story. Biden, as we've covered, has been pushing EVs like crazy, except for Tesla, who he's been obstructing at every turn, pretty much because he hates Elon Musk, and the Department of Transportation's latest move is no different. They announced last week over $630 million in funding for EV charging infrastructure, something that can take off now that the NACS standard is widely available, which Tesla invented, by the way. Hopefully this will work out better than his rural broadband initiative, which spent $313 million but didn't connect up a single home. Starlink is available at Target, by the way. Anyway, the point is, Tesla applied for $100 million for the first big rig charging corridor for their Tesla Semi. Some units have been delivered to companies like Pepsi and Frito-Lay, but that's dependent on chargers being available at least among main delivery corridors. Remember that in this case, it's not about setting up some lone supercharger somewhere. These things will have to be deployed at truck stops where drivers can get food, take showers, and sleep all night in their cabs, taking up one of the chargers while doing so, since the cabs need to be temperature controlled. So as part of the charging and fueling infrastructure program, part of Biden's bipartisan infrastructure deal, Tesla was going to use that money along with an extra $24 million of its own to build 9 semi-charging stations between Fremont, California to Laredo, Texas, all along the southern border. Currently, Tesla semis can travel up to 500 miles on a single charge. The stations would be equipped with 8 of their new 750 kilowatt chargers for the Tesla Semi, and, as per requirements, 4 others open to other electric trucks. They were passed over in the first round of $623 million in funding last year, but continued pushing the charging corridor. Now they've been passed over yet again, and there's been no announcement of when the rest of the $2.5 billion allocated for the program will be available. The rest of it might be nuked when Biden leaves. Previously, the Biden administration spent $7.5 billion and ended up building just 38 charging stations. By comparison, Tesla superchargers cost about $500,000 each, meaning the same amount of money could have built 15,000 superchargers. Idiotically, a lot of the proposals were given for hydrogen fuel stations, even though the industry is moving away from hydrogen as a fuel source, especially for larger vehicles like semis. It just isn't dense enough of fuel to make it worthwhile. Sounds like more Solyndra-esque cronyism to me. I mean, you didn't think the infrastructure bill was actually about infrastructure, did you? Tesla seems like it's going ahead with the corridor anyway, albeit perhaps more slowly. It's the competing electric truck companies that'll be left behind, since they don't really have the ability to build out their own, so they'll have to wait to free ride on whatever Tesla does. So, once again, it'll be up to the private sector to build out the infrastructure as government wastes our money on one failed technology after another. But seriously, should we ever have expected anything else?
Sometimes you just have to stomp some skulls. From the mind of Mr. Dapperton, a game for the ages. In a world where a race of undead furries tries to take over the world's nuclear arsenal, one man must stop them. But which man? You choose. Dapperton, Elon,
Not my Dogecoins.
Joe,
Build me back.
Shapiro,
My kippa's ruined.
or Don John.
Ow, my ear!
Forget those losers. You know you want to play as me, Lord Killian. That's right. You can stomp the skulls of those commie furries and save the universe as me.
7 complete different worlds with more coming all the time. Full controller support. You can even get eaten by a worm and pooped out into a furry cathedral. You know you want this game. Go to links.bogosity.tv/skullstompers and play Skull Stompers now.
We've covered the problems countries like Germany have had by shutting off their nuclear power plants, particularly as an unusually cold winter rages through the continent. We covered how that royally pissed off Sweden, who has suffered higher prices because EU rules mandate they sell power to Germany when their power levels drop too low. But France hasn't had that issue, since their nuclear fleet is still going strong. Although they stopped building new power plants, the existing plants are still going, and they actually have a pretty good fuel recycling infrastructure to cut down on nuclear waste. And nuclear is hitting the highs, while solar and wind drop to astoundingly low levels, in many cases requiring oil generation to cover the losses. Their power company's fleet of reactors put out more than 55 gigawatts of electricity at a time when wind slumped below 3.8 gigawatts. Last weekend, wind had slumped to less than a gigawatt. The last time France's nuclear generation was this high was in the winter of 2019. At its peak, the French are paying about 120 euros per megawatt hour. That converts favorably to the current average U.S. electricity rate of 11 cents per kilowatt hour. Meanwhile, Germany's oil generation surged to levels not seen since 2017. Their electricity prices rose to 360 euros per megawatt hour. Sadly, increased cries from Germans to restart their nuclear reactors are falling on deaf ears in their government. But it's only going to get colder, and those voices will only get louder. If it's a cold winter where you are, and you're still able to keep yourself nice and toasty warm, especially if it's relatively cheap to do so, you might want to give a bit of thanks to nuclear power, because that's almost certainly the reason why, as opposed to solar and wind, which are failing all around us. If you're on the Wi-Fi in a coffee shop or hotel, anyone on that network can get your traffic. Do you really trust all of those strangers? For that matter, do you really trust your ISP? A VPN can protect you from prying eyes, disguise your location, and even foil government censors. It's essential in this day and age, so go to vpn.bogosity.tv and you'll be taken to BoxPN. Starting at just $2.99 a month, you can get unlimited high-speed connections to VPN servers all over the world, and they don't log connections, so your privacy is assured. Traveling abroad, just VPN home, and don't worry about what those other governments are doing. Back at home, stop your ISP from traffic shaping and messing with the quality internet access you're paying good money for. You can connect from multiple machines at once, including your smartphone or tablet, and it supports all the secure standards, including OpenVPN and SSTP. Bypass censors and surveillance with your own secure VPN connection. Go to vpn.bogosity.tv. This next one you may be wondering why I'm covering. Stick around, we'll get there. A battery storage plant owned by Vistra Energy in California caught fire, resulting in over 1,000 people in the area being asked to evacuate. The plant was located in Moss Landing in Monterey County, about 25 miles south of Santa Cruz. Numerous residents posted videos of the fire to social media. Fire Chief Joel Mendoza said, quote, "Our first unit on scene arrived and found that there was smoke out of the building, and we did find at least one battery on fire." After an hour, a fire suppression system in the facility that was known to have worked well in the past ended up not helping this time. Quote, "In this particular case, that system was not sufficient. It was overridden, and that led to fire overtaking the system and eventually overtaking the entire building. Between 1,200 and 1,500 residents were evacuated safely from the surrounding 7,600 acres of land. The main concern is hydrogen fluoride, a toxic gas released from burning lithium batteries. Monterey County Supervisor Glenn Church said, quote, "This is really a lot more than just a fire. It's really a wake-up call for this industry. And if we're going to be moving ahead with sustainable energy, we need to have safe battery systems in place." So, might want to keep that in mind next time someone claims that we need renewables because of the dangers of nuclear power. Okay, so now on to the part we really need to talk about. Lots of social media and even other news outlets reported this as Tesla batteries catching on fire after Daily Kos published an article with the headline, "Tesla Battery Fire at Moss Landing Power Plant." In other news, Daily Kos is still a thing. Who knew? Yeah, Tesla has nothing to do with this. Apparently, they decided to blame Tesla just because, and hey, it's another way to make an attack on Elon Musk, right? Tech news journalist Sawyer Merritt posted on X, "This is completely misleading and not true, Daily Kos. While there is currently a fire at Moss Landing, which houses a 3,000 megawatt-hour battery storage facility, the world's largest, the facility on fire, owned by Vistra Energy, is not a Tesla Megapack facility. There is a separate 256-unit Tesla Megapack battery storage facility located next door, but the fire did not originate from Tesla's batteries or that facility. As of 8 p.m. Pacific Time tonight, that Tesla energy storage facility remains unaffected. This means the fire has no connection to Tesla or its Megapack product, making the headline below completely misleading." And Elon Musk reposted it saying, quote, "To reiterate, the legacy news headlines are false. This fire has nothing to do with Tesla, and our Megapacks are operating well." Well, go to that link now, and what do you get? A 403 error! That means the requested resource exists, but is forbidden, and the web server refuses to fulfill it. They also appear to have removed it from the Wayback Machine. So instead of apologizing and publishing a retraction, they've just decided to memory hold the entire article, as we've come to expect from such illustrious outlets as the New York Times. Sorry, people, I'd love to give all sorts of quotes from the Daily Kos article, but I couldn't find anywhere that had archived it. So many people are bemoaning the fact that, since anyone can just post anything to social media, you no longer can trust any news you read. As longtime listeners of this podcast know, the truth is, you never could. In fact, nowadays, you get better information from social media as everyone and their brother pushes to correct it, as we'll see when we continue. I want to tell you about the eyeglasses I've been wearing for years. As people can see on my videos, I have a very strong prescription, which makes glasses more expensive, especially when I need computer glasses, reading glasses, prescription sunglasses, and most expensively, progressive lenses for general everyday wear. To save money while still getting quality glasses, I get them from Firmoo. In fact, I just got a pair of progressives with high-index aspherical lenses and a nice pair of frames my wife loves for just over $100. It would have been $500 to get them through my eye doctor. Not only do they look good, the glasses are durable. I've worn many pairs for several years without problems. All orders come with a 30-day return policy, a 3-month warranty, and one-on-one customer service. Go to Firmoo, that's FIRMOO.Bogosity.tv anytime you need quality glasses at a low price. Once again, that's Firmoo.Bogosity.tv. And now it's time to multi-articulate this week's biggest Bogon emitter. And this week it goes to Senator Elizabeth Warren for something which, in any sanely run society, would be considered fraud and misappropriation. She called for action in the wake of the California wildfires as they devastated the Palisades. She posted on X, "To help support the communities around LA being devastated by wildfires, Can you split a donation between the Los Angeles Fire Department Foundation and United Way of Greater Los Angeles? 100% of your donation will go directly to these organizations. The problem? The link she actually posted was to Act Blue, which regular listeners should know about. This is a so-called charity that fundraises for Democrats, the same one Judge Merchan's daughter worked for in raising money based on the Trump hush money trial. On the face of it, the 100% claim is a lie. 4% is taken right off the top. But that's just the start of it. Data Republican posted a thread going into detail about where your money would actually go if you donated. He wrote, "If you donated $100, who takes what cut? I am going to attempt the difficult job of unwinding the charity rabbit hole to understand this. Let's start with the top level. Act Blue's 3.95% processing fee cut. They take $3.95 from that $100, leaving $96.05. That $96.05 is held up to 30 days, doesn't go to victims immediately. And then we assume $48.03 goes to United Way of Greater Los Angeles, $48.03 goes to the Los Angeles Fire Department Foundation. Now, charities are required by law to make their administrative expenditures public through Form 990. We don't know the actual recipients yet. Here's what it looks like for United Way of Los Angeles. Out of the $49 million they received in that year, they dispersed only $31 million. The majority went into salaries. And I didn't even know charities had pensions. Overall, for this particular year, United Way kept 37% of donations for themselves. Wow! United Way used to be bad, but they've gotten so much worse. He continues, quote, "Despite this, United Way of Greater Los Angeles earns a 97% on Charity Navigator. I am also sensing that these charity rating aggregators are rackets in themselves. Yeah, sadly, Charity Navigator hasn't been good in a long time." Quote, "GuideStar collects demographic data. Who cares about that except leftists holding purse strings? ProPublica Nonprofit Explorer is not helpful either. It seems you have to go directly to the Form 990 to understand the actual expenditure ratios. Now, you can say that salaries and administrative expenditures are necessary to hire labor to build houses, hand out food, etc. But for United Way, this is not the case. They are strictly a middleman. This from the 990 for the most recent year for United Way of Greater Los Angeles. They received $44,808,121 and dispersed only $27,551,024 of it. They kept 38.51%. Our 4803 has shrank to 2953. For those keeping track, we started with a $100 donation to Act Blue. Act Blue took $3.95 and gave $48.03 to United Way and $48.03 to Los Angeles Fire Department. United Way took $18.50 and gave $29.53. Our $100 has already shrank to $77.56, and the rabbit hole is far from complete. In a separate tweet, he posted a very complex graph of the incestuous way United Way chapters donate to each other to hide the grift. Now, on to Los Angeles Fire Department Foundation. They too appear to be a pass-through entity. It seems they employ a single person, and their purpose is largely to give to the Los Angeles Fire Department program, which is another charity. Alright, let's just get to his summary. Quote, "If you donated $100 to Elizabeth Warren's Act Blue link for Los Angeles wildfire victims, Act Blue took $3.95 and gave $48.03 to United Way of Greater Los Angeles and $48.03 to Los Angeles Fire Department Foundation. United Way of Los Angeles took $18.50 and gave $29.53 to miscellaneous charities. I optimistically assume these represent boots on the ground. Los Angeles Fire Department took $16.71 and gave $31.32 to seemingly themselves, but I am assuming that is going to the actual fire department. Middlemen took $39.15 of your $100. At most, $60.85 went to those in need. Furthermore, middlemen do not instantly disperse money. Act Blue holds funds for up to 30 days, and who knows how long United Way holds these donations." Warren earned a lot of animosity for this tweet. Mike Cernovich simply replied, "You are scum." Joe Neerman of Good Logic replied, "There is no tragedy Democrats won't scam for money. Burn in hell, Elizabeth Warren." Buzz Patterson replied, "Dems are using the LA fires to raise money for their political PAC. Scum of the earth." Libs of TikTok replied, "We know you are evil, but this is next level." And oh, all of the AI images of her taking money from people while in an Indian headdress. I'm just about to the point of never donating to a charity again. You never can tell how much, if any, of your money is going where it needs to be. At least if you invest, you know it's going to people with an incentive to do the best they can with it. This is a grift, plain and simple. How horrible of a human being do you need to be to prey on people's feelings about a terrible tragedy to deviate their donation money to the pockets of your political cronies? So all of that makes Elizabeth Warren this week's biggest Bogon emitter. Do you have children, or nieces or nephews? Are you homeschooling, or just want to counter some of the socialist indoctrination most children get in school? If so, go to Bogosity.tv/TuttleTwins, and you'll be taken to a website where you can get some great books for elementary-age children. The Tuttle Twins books are books about liberty and free market economics that include children's versions of Bastiat's The Law, Leonard Read's I, Pencil, and Hayek's The Road to Serfdom, as well as books about the Federal Reserve and how regulations protect business cronies. They'll learn about the harm caused by eminent domain, or regulations passed in the name of safety, and fundamental concepts of liberty. And as you can see from the sample pages on the website, they're all easy to read and nicely illustrated. They're just $9.99 a piece, or get a special discount as well as free bonuses when you purchase all 5. You can even buy in bulk to donate to schools and local libraries. So get the Tuttle Twins books at Bogosity.tv/TuttleTwins. And now let's anti-disproportionalize this week's Idiot Extraordinaire. I guess Joe Biden just had to get one more on his way out the door, which he gets with Kamala Harris. Let's start with Biden and the incredibly bogus claim he made, which is 100% official and directly from the White House. Quote, "Today I'm affirming what I have long believed and what 3/4 of the states have ratified. The 28th Amendment is the law of the land, guaranteeing all Americans equal rights and protections under the law, regardless of their sex." And attached is an image which says, "President Biden declares the Equal Rights Amendment is now the law of the land, guarantees all Americans equal rights and protections under the law, regardless of their sex." Here's what he said in a recent speech.
Just over 100 years ago, a pioneering group of women proposed the Equal Rights Amendment to enshrine the principles of gender equality in our Constitution. Throughout my career, I've been clear. No one should be discriminated against based on their sex. And in order for the amendment to be ratified, it requires 3/4 of the states to ratify it. That benchmark was passed when Virginia ratified the ERA a few years ago. Today, I affirm the Equal Rights Amendment to have cleared all the necessary hurdles to be added to the U.S. Constitution now. The Equal Rights Amendment is the law of the land now. It's the 28th Amendment to the Constitution now. I consulted dozens of constitutional scholars to make sure that it was all within the power to do this. And the fact is, we did.
The big problem is, it's not even remotely true. The ERA literally says, quote, "which shall be valid to all intents and purposes as part of the Constitution when ratified by the legislatures of 3/4 of the several states within 7 years from the date of its submission by the Congress." That deadline expired on June 30, 1982, with only 35 states ratifying, 3 short of the 38 needed for the 3/4 majority required by the Constitution. All he needed to do was speak to his own archivist, who wrote just a few weeks ago, quote, "At this time, the Equal Rights Amendment, ERA, cannot be certified as part of the Constitution due to established legal, judicial, and procedural decisions. In 2020 and again in 2022, the Office of Legal Counsel of the U.S. Department of Justice affirmed that the ratification deadline established by Congress for the ERA is valid and enforceable. The OLC concluded that extending or removing the deadline requires new action by Congress or the courts. Court decisions at both the district and circuit levels have affirmed that the ratification deadlines established by Congress for the ERA are valid. Therefore, the Archivist of the United States cannot legally publish the Equal Rights Amendment." Her remarks are consistent with what Supreme Court Justice and ERA supporter Ruth Bader Ginsburg said, that they'd need to start over. And a number of states have withdrawn their certification. As she said, how do you count these later states ratifying after the deadline, but disregard the ones who change their minds? Kamala Harris, never one to be left out of Bogosity, tweeted, "The Equal Rights Amendment is the 28th Amendment, and it is the law of the land." And she said in a statement, quote, "Equality is a fundamental promise of our democracy. That is why the Equal Rights Amendment belongs in our Constitution. It makes our nation stronger, and it is the law of the land because the American people have spoken in states across our nation. History teaches us that civil rights are fought for and won with every generation. That continues to be true today, which is why I have spent my career fighting for freedoms and to expand opportunities for women and girls. It has always been clear that when we lift up women, we lift up children, families, communities, and all of society. Now, Americans must continue to fight for a more equal and just nation where everyone has the opportunity to realize the promise of America." Sorry, Harris, there are still only 27 amendments. They aren't saying they wish it were true or they hope it were true, but that it is. That is stupidity and incompetence of the highest order, as well as, apparently, the hubris to think they can change reality just by declaring it to be so. So that gives Biden and Harris one more idiot extraordinaire. Well, that wraps up this Who Fills Your Head with This Childish Fiddle-Faddle edition of the Bogosity Podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please go to donate.bogosity.tv for several ways to support and discord.bogosity.tv to join the discussion. Subscribe at the Discord or at Patreon or Subscribestar, and you can listen early and ad-free. Thank you for listening. Until next time, here's a quote from Terry Goodkind. "Because people are stupid, they will believe a lie because they want to believe it's true, or because they are afraid it might be true. People's heads are full of knowledge, facts, and beliefs, and most of it is false, yet they think it all true." The Bogosity Podcast is licensed under Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives 4.0 International License. Bogosity.